Good afternoon, you godless heathens. Allow me to introduce to you a friend of ours, Morne. Morne, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Amazing, man, amazing. Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm always so happy to meet new atheists and introduce new faces to everybody. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Morne. How did you get how did you discover that you were an atheist? Did you grow up in religion? Tell us a little bit about the background first of all.
Okay, so I grew up in the NG Kerk, and good old NG Kerk, and
Dutch Reformed.
uh, oh yeah, and I was baptized there about 4 months old, and I'll talk a little bit more about the baptism later on, because that was also quite interesting. So I grew up in the NG Kerk, and then when I turned 20 and I went to study in Wellington, I joined the Joshua Generation Church in Wellington. I'm not quite sure exactly what type of church it is. I've been assured it's not some kind of charismatic church, but they were a lot more into the whole, healing through the power of prayer and praise and worship. We had insanely long sermons, and most of it was just praise and worship. Almost putting yourself in half of like a trance state of mind. And excuse me. So yeah, I was there for about a year, and it was still in my first year that I got baptized in that church as well, which was interesting because um, I don't know if you ever heard about the little purple book, the persboekie. It's this really really thin little purple book that basically takes you. It's a little crash course of Christianity, basically. Um, and so in one of the chapters, probably like chapter 6 or chapter 7, you have one about, or you have lessons about what it means to be baptized. And at the time, which made more sense to me, was that, and before I mentioned that, I always just found it so funny that in the Inca, when they baptize a baby, they say that this is not a ritual, you know. But it is a ritual.
It's
You
a
are
ritual.
performing a ritual. So that was kind of funny, and so the thing with the baptism at Joshua Generation was what they told me was that they believed that a baptism should be a decision made by the person who wants to be baptized, obviously. And I thought, I think this is great. I could really turn my life around if I got baptized. But yeah, so I ended up getting baptized. We ended up sitting down for only about 15 minutes. And all they really asked you is like, okay, so this is the lesson. This says that you are basically making a 180 of your life. You're turning away from sin, well, whatever. Do you agree? Do you? Yes, of course. But any fool can say yes. And so I became baptized. And the more I attended that church, the more I started realizing that when they preach about those core principles like love and humility and forgiveness and all those things, I don't know what barmhartigheid is. It's probably just compassion or something. They when they preach about those things, or even about marriage, I could see a clear contrast. I can't recall, but like details. But you could see a clear contrast between the way they would teach you that in the NG Kerk and the way that they would teach you that in Joshua Generation. And so eventually, a friend of mine asked me a very important question. He asked, "Don't you think it's interesting how all these people read the same book, but they come to different conclusions?" And that made me think a little bit. Is the problem with the people interpreting the book, or is it the content of it that is the problem? I think it's a little bit of both at the end of the day. But it also speaks to the cherry picking of religion and of specific denominations, actually. And how every denomination pretty much just furthers its own narrative based on their interpretation of what they read, and the parts that they choose to read and the parts that they choose to ignore, which is, like 99% of the whole book. Um, and I ended up going to my pastor in the Ingekerk as well as the pastor at Joshua Generation, and I asked them both the same question. I asked them, I'm having these doubts. I'm finding, that you guys don't really preach the same thing, essentially. So do you think that I should just stay in one of the churches, or should I still attend both? And they gave me two different answers. I believe it was the Ingekerk who said, no, stay in our church, only come to our church. And Joshua Generation said, go to both. But for a 20-year-old that was out of the house on his own for the first time in his life, actually having to actually make his own decisions, which I'm still not pretty good at, that was not what I was looking for. And it was heavy confusing. And so that's where I think where the big doubt started coming in. But I was really like, now I was beginning to be unsure. And on an unrelated note to baptism and to basic to the theology, I was invited to a breakfast, or it was more of a brunch, by the guy who actually baptized me. Wonderful person. He's at the time of my baptism, he was in his 4th year, intermediate phase, and he's still a teacher now. But he's an absolutely wonderful person. I have no grudges against him. It was him and his roommate, and then it was myself and one of my roommates, as well as one of the other guys that was also, I think, in his 3rd or 4th year, living someplace else in Wellington. And we met up, and we were all, we all like music, so we were all jamming a little bit on the guitar. We were singing and just talking about stuff. It was near the end of the year, and suddenly, out of nowhere, luckily this was after the meal, because that would have made the meal so awkward. Suddenly, after the meal, they come up with the question of whether or not we believe in evolution. And this guy who baptized me said that his uncle or his cousin or someone is apparently a paleontologist, and that he has admitted that all paleontologists agree that they can't really tell the difference between a fossil and a rock. And there's that whole thing about them using circular reasoning by dating the fossils based on the rocks and dating the rocks based on the fossils, without really having a good comprehension of how that whole process works. And I sat there and they asked me, Morne, do you believe in evolution? And I sat there and I thought, yeah. I mean, I didn't know much about biology at all at that point. I know a little bit more now, but they asked me this question, and I sort of felt like, yeah, I'm just going to blindly say yes, I suppose. I didn't know the details of evolution. I didn't know what natural selection was. I didn't know any of these things. But a fun fact that I learned only in about, I think it was about 2 or 3 years later. It was very cool, and I don't know if you know this, but do you know how you can tell the difference between a fossil and a rock? You can lick it.
And
If you lick a rock, it is dusty and it's crumbly, kind of like a little bit of like sand coming off. But if you lick a fossil, it's sticky. It's almost like licking a toffee. And that, yeah, legit. This I can confirm. I have done this. It is incredible. It's the craziest thing. I mean, obviously the experts in the field don't go out and lick fossils to know if this is a fossil or a rock. They actually,
people running in the canoe licking rocks.
yeah, they do have other methods. But that was very interesting. And I suppose, so I suppose the whole science denial thing at the end of the day, the science denial as well as the sort of, mixed batch of theology, was really confusing, and it made me seriously consider whether or not I still wanted to be part of a group of people that have these ideals. And I mean, at that point, I was not in favor of the Ingekerk at all, even though they are today, some of the churches are a bit more progressive, beginning to be a bit more liberal than the Hervormde Kerk, for example, or Jehovah's Witnesses, or any of those other denominations, especially the Catholics. But I won't talk about Catholicism. I don't know much about Catholicism. So yeah, that was my ticket out, I think. And I hopped onto YouTube, and suddenly I I happened upon channels like Source that did all amazing science communication and talking about psychology and about all these sort of things. Not at all, again, not at all targeted at religion, but really just looking at the core principles of how science works and how science is done and what the scientific method is and how it's used these days and the amazing applications and the amazing things you can study through it. And so, you know, I sort of at my my love for science was rebirthed because I didn't do very well at it in school. But yeah, when I discovered those channels, those science channels, it was incredible, and eventually stumbled upon other YouTubers.
So,
yeah.
So would you label the inconsistencies between the biblical narrative and the scientific literature as basically as the linchpin in your deconversion?
Yeah, I think to a large degree it is. It's primarily the fundamentalist take on things in the Bible. People, you know, claims like, you know, they talk about dinosaurs in the Bible when they don't. It's, you know, I believe the the behemoth describes an elephant and the Leviathan describes a crocodile. But apparently, according to people like Ken Ham and who's the other guy, Kent Hovind. Yeah, sorry, not Ken Ham. Actually, Ken Ham doesn't like our Answers in Genesis. Doesn't like Kent Hovind very much. Which is hilarious. Two people are wrong and they still disagree. So, but yeah, it's primarily it's just this utter disregard that a lot of people have for objective truth. There is things such as objective truth, and like Sam Harris said, if you met someone who said that, you know, I prefer not to think of water as 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. How do you have a conversation about the properties of water, the chemical properties of water with that person? How do you reason with a person who didn't use reason to arrive at their beliefs? How do you use evidence to support your beliefs if the person you're talking to uses faith? Yeah, so I suppose, yeah, that was definitely the linchpin, yeah.
Right. And, you know, was there any specific one person or maybe an organization that that was instrumental in this deconversion process, or influential, I should say?
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily an organization per se. I was primarily, you know, I saw all these ideas from other YouTubers like Alex O'Connor from Cosmic Skeptic and Stephen Woodford from Rationality Rules, and then also this guy who calls himself Professor Stick. And yeah, he's just a little cartoon man, but he's got a biology degree, like I think a master's or something like that. Really smart guy. As for actual speakers, activists, Christopher Hitchens is obviously one of them. I discovered him a bit later on. The person that I very first, you know, took a big liking to was Aaron Ra, who you remember Tertia. She interviewed him. I was very jealous because on the day that she was interviewing him, I would not have been working, but I had to go in for a shift. And they drove all the way up there, and I was so jealous because I'd always wanted to meet this guy. And so I hope he becomes one of the people that I want to meet who doesn't die before I meet them. Because so far that has happened twice, that there is a person I really wanted to meet, and then I found out that that person had died even before, you know, I was an atheist, or even before I knew they existed. You know, one was John Denver, and the other one was Christopher Hitchens. Yeah, Hitchens is his little lot of tongue-in-cheek commentary and all his examples, but I love it. I had no idea that there were all these people out there saying all these things. You know, like Christopher Hitchens saying religion is poison, and as someone who at the point of actually watching him say stuff like that, I was an atheist by definition, but I didn't identify as one. I was still agnostic. I still believed in the higher power, which is what 99% of people who deconvert, they go through that where you have the want to believe, and as soon as you overcome that sort of mental roadblock, then you realize I'm an atheist. So yeah, Aaron Ra with his evolution and Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules with their philosophy, they played an enormous part in my deconversion and my deconstruction of my religion. And I still watch their content to this day. Although I think my taste in their videos, I'm a bit more selective about what I watch these days. I still value what these people have to say, and even other atheist creators or other skeptics out there. I'm still more selective about what I watch, but the University of YouTube served me very well.
Excellent. Yeah. For me, it was a combination of three people. It was Christopher Hitchens. I ran into some archive work of Madeline Mario here.
Oh, yes.
And Sam Harris. Yeah.
Sam Harris is brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? I really appreciated Madeline Mario here just for her tenacity as an activist. She was just so tenacious. The more people derided and gave her hell, the more she gave it back.
Yeah. I especially like, actually, Aaron Ra, I think, mirrored one of her speeches on his channel at some point where she was bashing atheists. But they are what you would call, I suppose, if you look at what armchair philosophy is, these people would be armchair atheists. You're more than happy to just sit at home. I'm an atheist, keyboard warrior, I disagree with people on the internet, and I have all these opinions, but what are you doing to normalize it? What are you doing to actually tell people, hey, look, it is okay to be an atheist and still be a normal functioning member of society? And most of them do nothing. And so I definitely like that about her style and about what she had to say. And now you've given me food for thought. I'm definitely going to go rewatch some of that.
Yeah, this is the thing. Especially with when it comes to activism, I'm a big fan of learning from those that have walked in this road ahead of us. And just to incorporate those lessons, because if you can't learn from the past, you're bound to repeat the same mistakes that people made in the past. But speaking of activism, are you involved in any activism online or in person?
I wouldn't say very serious activism. I do have a TikTok account, and I've uploaded more videos than I actually thought I have. If I have to guess, I've probably uploaded about.
That's incidentally how I found you.
Yeah, I remember. It's been I've sort of hit like a bit of a dry spot, especially now with work. You're constantly tired, and so you don't really have that. You don't really have that time for creating. But hopefully, in the coming weeks, coming months, people will start seeing more of me online. And also now and then, I don't really post to Facebook, but now and then there would just be something on my mind, and I would write an entire fucking essay, just about like what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, and then sort of like it'll get 5 or 6 likes, and then that'll be cool, that'll be fine. So as far as that goes, not much, but I do hope to be more active. And then also I've spoken to Tassia. She and I are going to get more involved in getting her NPO off the ground, where we promote critical thinking skills as well as scientific skepticism and the normalization of atheism. And we want to be able to say, listen, we promote all these values, and we are atheists. But you don't have to be an atheist to be a part of this to be a part of the NPO, to help or to be, you could say, an agent of the NPO. If you want to, even if you just want to have a time after school where you sit in the classroom and you let some kids do their homework, or if you do some personal study and you say, okay, cool, we're just going to watch this video today, and it's just going to be a video on the straw man fallacy or anything like that. You don't have to be a philosopher, you don't have to be a physicist, you don't have to be any sort of scientist, you don't even have to have a degree. I don't have any of those things, but I am a little bit of all those things, I think, on a very amateur level. But yeah, that's basically what we want to do, and so I'm hoping for 2022, I really want to dedicate some time to that, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I really think we can make a difference. If I may speak on her behalf for just a second without being too private, she and some members of her family have suffered under, some what you would call it, discrimination based on their lack of belief. And I found that incredibly, obviously, luckily I was past my angry atheist stage when she told me. Otherwise I would have freaked out. I would have run into that school and did something. Grabbed the principal by the shoulders. But it's stuff like that, if it comes to religious instruction, for example. First of all, religious education in our schools is terrible. They have this horrible way of generalizing all religions as teaching pretty much the same principle. When, okay, yeah, love thy neighbor, the golden rule, is probably fine. I don't agree with it myself. I think the golden rule, as Anton LaVey puts it in his Satanic Bible, if you follow the golden rule, you're setting yourself up for being kicked while you're on the ground, and still you're going to roll over on your back like a puppy and pant, and not going to do anything about it, because that is what the golden rule asks you to do. So, I live according to a bit of a twist on the golden rule, which is do unto others as they do unto you. So, which can be a little bit dangerous. There's that Afrikaans idiom that says "Moenie kwaad met kwaad vergeld nie." So, you're not necessarily gonna fix a situation. If a guy punches you in the face, you're not going to do much about the situation by punching him back. But if a guy punches you in the face and you give him a good enough reason, physical or not, that he knows he should never ever do that again, that automatically beats the golden rule by miles. And again, it can be mostly verbal. I'm a pacifist myself. Yes, we all do get angry. You do see you hear some news, or you hear from a friend something terrible happened to them, and there is that drive which you will never get rid of, and I don't think anyone should ever try and suppress that emotion of feeling like you just want to jump on that person and show them who's boss, But will I do that? No, I immediately after thinking that, it brings me some relief. Just like at some point I was so frustrated with my work, I was polishing some glasses, some drinking glasses, wine glasses, and while I was standing there, I had this epic moment of catharsis where I just pictured myself, while I'm doing this, pictured myself picking up every single bottle, every single glass, every single thing, and just throwing everything in, throw it against the wall, throw it against the floor. There's beer and glass and blood everywhere. And it's so calming. It really is so calming, and it puts everything back into perspective. And you don't have to have a sick mind for that to make sense, or for that to actually work for you. I think it shows that we can have immense self-control when it comes to handling our emotions. So even with something like that, or even if it's just doing cash up after shift and listening to some Suicide Silence, some nice heavy or black metal, it's extremely cathartic, and it should be encouraged. And kids should be encouraged to listen to whatever music they want. You should. I actually today saw a video where Jordan Peterson said that our children learn by doing dangerous things carefully. But so yeah, that's sort of like the main point, I think, of this whole thing. We're all also targeting sex education, and by the way, we're trying to make the critical thinking skills and all that stuff form a part of life orientation, which, in my not so humble opinion, is one of the most useless subjects as is in schools. It's yeah, beyond words, but there's hope, you know. Like Stephen Hawking said, as long as there is life, there is hope. But as long as there is someone to do something about it, then there is most certainly a chance. And I think obviously it's going to be a slow process, but it's something I'm willing to stick with, and I really think we can make this work.
Yeah, no, amazing. I love the the work that you guys do with that NGO. You know, it's so important that we teach people, especially young people, not what to think, but how to think about things.
Yes.
You know, and also, you know, by broaching taboo subjects. I mean, like sex education is a very, very taboo subject in our society. You know, like you don't, you're not taught about it in school, or you know, very seldom that parents are open enough to teach their children honestly and openly about sex. You know, it's usually learned behind the behind the classroom. It's and that's you know, it's weird, you know, because you know, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. You know, like I would have had such a healthier and more holistic, well-rounded view of sexuality. And if only I encountered like more wholesome and informative and instructive ideas earlier in life. You know, like, and it prevents people from going through this process of trial and error, and you know, eventually, you know, stumbling onto something that works. You know, it just gives people an informed, you know, an informed opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Because I never had the talk with my parents ever. We never even touched upon it. I don't want to swear, so I'm not going to tell this quip, but but I already swore, but not too much, you know. It's the like growing up, you know, you had all these had all these funny jokes that you would always make, and eventually when I started picking up gaming, PC gaming, obviously now you're in this whole new world where these people say such obscene stuff, but you know, it is all said in jest, but it's also sometimes, I don't know, you would just hear them making some jokes, and you would think to yourself, what is that? What did you just say? So what I learned about sex and sexuality was primarily from my messed up friends, you know, who made all these stupid jokes, it's abysmal. And then you think back, and when you start sort of learning how to pick up on, for example, how to know if someone is sexually active, you think back, and even though I can't remember much of my childhood or much of my high school career, you think back and you start noticing, wow, most of the people I knew back in school were sexually active, and how and I'm happy to say that I think most of them did it quite responsibly, but you know, there were the odd case of someone having a not too good experience, which is, you know, extremely saddening. But just again, if they had a proper education, then this whole idea of sex before marriage, and how it's supposedly so taboo, and the whole concept of virginity, you know, it's so toxic and it's horrible, and it ruins. I think it really does ruin the experience for a lot of people. And I can sort of say I'm glad that the first time I had sex, I had already moved past the whole idea of being a virgin. It comes down to the fact that everyone needs practice, because if you are, for example, if you grew up in your typical middle class family, or upper middle class, or even upper class family, you're more likely to get married at a later age. Imagine how horrible it must be to have sex on your wedding night for the very first time in your life and you're like 30. I can't imagine what that must be like. And again, the words ring true. Everyone needs practice. Everyone needs practice. Women need practice. Men need practice. And at the end of the day, it's such a fun thing to do as well. Which is also a point that comes up a lot in this whole evolution debate. If I could sort of like circle back to that, is that a lot of Christians still have this concept or this perception of sex as it being nothing more than a means of reproduction. So it's just like a job. It's supposed to be something.
What is up with that? We recently had a talk about purity culture and how religion poisons sexuality for people. I cannot put my finger on why sexuality fills religion with such a refulgence. It's almost like they consider it like as something to be grinned and endured. It's not like an expression of being a human. I don't get it. I really don't get it. It's probably a control measure. It's a bunch of stuck-up old men that want to control women and have power.
Definitely. Definitely. And that's also, you get so many people who really only come to terms with their sexuality after they deconvert, because now finally you are not in a space where those thoughts are repressed. You're not in any sort of environment, well, probably to an extent, but you are to a lesser extent in an environment where you can be censored or monitored for having those thoughts about, like, am I really straight? Am I just gay? Am I maybe bisexual? Am I asexual? Am I pansexual? What is it? And again, Google is the most brilliant thing, because when you start searching all these terms, that's when you really start to get to know yourself. Even if it is just something that you see in a movie, and you think, could this be me? This person has these experiences, and those experiences feel a lot like my experiences, and they show a lot of the same emotion. It makes you grow curious, and it even makes you grow doubtful. And I've even heard other atheists, and I can't fathom it, how other skeptics have told me that doubt is unhealthy. Doubt is the healthiest thing ever. It's healthier than flipping Powerade. It should be encouraged at all times. You should even you should even doubt skepticism sometimes, because you can be too skeptical. But when it comes to those are probably the two biggest things. I would say it perfectly actually sums up the three main areas that we want to, or that I would like to, again, continue to learn more, as well as teach other people to ask questions about religion, about sexuality, and about science. That is what it boils down to for me. And you see more and more people these days go down that road, and the more you look around on Facebook, or especially Facebook, but also Twitter, you see people posting a lot of controversial stuff, or a lot of like funny things in all three of these fields, and there are conversations happening every single day. Unfortunately, probably about from what I've seen, it's very seldom that you would get a new original idea in any of that, because you still get the questions of you still get the whole thing of like, homosexuality is a choice. Okay, cool. You as a straight person, I dare you to try and be gay.
You know what whenever somebody approaches me with like, homosexuality is a choice, I always ask them, like, so why don't you choose then to be, if it's a choice, then why don't you choose to be gay?
Yeah. And then you can't do it.
Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. or like, when did you choose to be straight? When did you choose?
Yeah, when did
to
you
be
choose
bi?
to be straight?
You know, you
And they
don't
will come
choose
up,
something. It's
and
a
they will
part of
come
your
up
makeup.
with they will come up with the quirkiest, I believe you call it ad hoc reasoning, or is it post hoc
Yeah.
reasoning, where it's well, for example, oh, you can't prove that you can't prove that homosexuality is purely natural, and I can't tell you when I chose to be straight, but what if everyone is born straight, or something like that, which is also not true. It's more likely that we're all
Yeah,
born
you know,
pretty
like,
much.
it's a control environment. You know, it's an
Yeah,
environment that's created where there is an authority, and the authority exerts control on people and controls every single aspect of their life.
yeah,
How they are supposed to work, you know, how they're supposed to eat, how they're supposed to live, who they're supposed to have sex with, who they're supposed to
yeah.
marry, you know, what they're supposed to do with everything. And it's you know, it's telling. It comes from a time when people were very ignorant. You know?
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
telling. You know, it's understandable. You know, but the thing is, you know, people need to like catch a wake up. You know, like we say here,
yeah.
skrik wakker. You know, like, just fucking skrik wakker.
I'd
Living in
say,
the 21st century.
I'd say one of the most useful, definitely one of the most useful epiphanies that any person today can have is that the people who came before, our ancestors, were wrong about 99.9% of what they thought they knew, right? We
Exactly.
have actually come a long way in expanding knowledge. And no, and yeah, well, science is definitely, the scientific method has definitely been the most reliable way of finding it. It's not the only way of finding it. There is a lot that you can do by purely just thinking, by just rationalization. Um, and it's so sickening, especially when I'm not even going to talk about conspiracy theorists because they cannot shut up enough about how all these people who were probably on shrooms and other drugs at the time saw all these amazing things and they think they saw a UFO, and meanwhile, it's just looking at a picture. Oh, this looks like that, because you already have a preconceived notion of what you're going to find, and then that is where it stops. There's no critical thinking. There's no critical inquiry. There's no. It's all just you being locked up in your bloody echo chamber, um,
Exactly.
and you're doing research is just looking at videos of people who echo your beliefs. That is not research. But yeah, it's that is something that has also had a phenomenal impact in my life. Realizing that even as recent as my parents, who still believed a lot of things that just simply aren't true that I was raised with, and I think a funny example was, and this is not got anything to do with religion, but it does tell you something about like actually going and doing your research. I don't know if you remember, there was a story, and it was one of those chain email stories of a woman, an old lady who went to McDonald's, who ordered a coffee, who spilled the coffee, scalding hot coffee on herself, and sued McDonald's for $40 million.
I don't remember this
That
specific one, but there's a lot of them that are similar.
Yeah, so and that was pretty much, that is all the information you have. And when you actually go look at the actual story and go look at newspaper articles and online articles and interviews, radio interviews, you find that this lady wasn't alone. This lady was with her grandson. Her grandson was driving, and he was even driving a very specific model of Toyota that didn't have any cup holders. So the guy gave the coffee to his grandmother to hold, and when he stopped in the parking lot, he braked a little bit too hard, and so it spilled on her. But they exaggerated the extent of her injuries. She only ended up getting about, because yeah, the original claim I think was about $45 million, which is absolutely preposterous. She even wanted McDonald's to make it a rule to serve their coffee to their clients at a colder temperature so that it wouldn't injure them. And McDonald's won the case against that.
It's a
The court
frivolous
completely
lawsuit. Yeah.
scrapped it. And so you think, if it's such a stupid story of an old lady almost winning, almost $50 million off of just very hot coffee that she spilled on herself, and you finding out that you were pretty much, every other sort of idea that you had about that story, you were completely wrong. You think, what else could I have been wrong about? And the answer is so much more. In fact,
Exactly.
you could be wrong about more than you think.
But this is a universal theme that I find amongst atheists and skeptics and agnostics, is that you realize that you've been conned by such a big lie.
Yeah.
That you are extremely skeptical when people approach you with all a matter of wonderful stories and weird ideas.
Yeah.
But it's a healthy sense of skepticism. People do run the risk of becoming hyper skeptical and over skeptical, and like you mentioned, that phase when you initially deconvert and you're angry. There is a phase where when you realize that you've been lied to about religion, that you just go, what else have I been lied to about? You question
Exactly.
every single thing. But this also this ties in with the next question. When I look at anything, be it religion, vaccinations, paying income tax, and anything, I do a cost benefit analysis, and especially with religion. In my opinion, the harm that it does far outweighs the good that it does. So, is there any negative impacts, that you could think of in your life? Besides, just speaking for myself, religion. I was constantly living in fear. I was constantly living in fear of doing something wrong, of sinning, of offending this one, or offending the man in the sky, and it also, it just puts this whole load of unrealistic expectations on you. You're doomed to set yourself up for failure. And I was just wondering if you had any insights on this aspect of religion and how it negatively impacts us in so many different ways.
The first thing that does come to mind is obviously the whole idea of death, which I find fascinating. And it pretty much again just boils down to the fact that this life is the only one we know we have. Like Sam Harris said, if this is all we have, if this is the only time that we know we have, why would we be anything else than kind to one another? I found it so difficult, even when I just met new people. There was always the criteria of what makes a Christian or what makes a good person, and probably that at its core. If you ask yourself as a Christian, what makes someone a good person, the very first item on that list of criteria is they must be a Christian. They must believe that Jesus Christ died for their sins on the cross. Otherwise, you're a horrible fucking human being. Or maybe you're not such a bad person, but you could be better as a Christian. And that was terrible. And today, I can walk past anyone in the street, and I'll put it this way: I can be as nice as I want to that person. Whereas I couldn't do that when I was religious, and it brings up it brings up the whole conversation of morality, which only very much later on was something that I took a very big interest in. The whole conversation of building a moral framework outside of religion, which was incredibly, was very eye-opening. It was very scary, because you would still have that fear of what if my super logical thinking that I want to fool myself, if I could fool myself that I am this super smart philosopher about morality, then what if someone can convince me to be nice to someone who raped someone else in front of me, or someone who killed my parents, you know. You get those sort of intrusive thoughts, but at the end of the day, if I look at it from the humanist perspective, which is still something I must admit that I'm sort of grappling with at the moment as well, that I also want to look more into. There is the idea, obviously, that we as humans have innate value, but I think that at the end of the day, I'm willing to treat you with sort of a default level of respect, even if I don't know you from anywhere. But the way that you act towards me and the way that we react to each other should sort of guide that level of respect, whether it brings it up or down.
It's very humanist, what you describe is, in a nutshell, is humanism. And I always, when people say to me they get their morals from their religion, I cringe. I really cringe, because there's some fucking awful morality in most religions built into it. And you know what? The turning point for me was when somebody said to me, "Consider that not every society on this planet has the same sense of morality." And it dawned on me that like the Dutch are, for example, far more liberal than the Americans are. In Holland, they're prostitutes in the window, they smoke pot on every street, and people are very relaxed and liberal with their ideas. Whereas, you go to the South in America and it's extremely prudish and conservative, and when I myself traveled to other parts of South Africa, and I went to Swaziland, and I went to more rural areas and more urban areas, and I encountered people, and I realized, societies are what builds morality into people.
Yeah.
You learn how to behave according to your society. It's not because the bearded man in the sky sneezed and had a bad day, and now all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? It's just very strange. I love to have conversations about morality with people, because it's just a few questions on, so what if you are in this country? Is it moral? Do you decide? It's a very flexible, fluid thing that people generally don't really think about, because we all grow up, it's very seldom that people leave their in-group. You grow up in a society of your peers, and maybe once or twice in your life, unless you are some globe-trotter, which is extremely rare, you'll leave your society, your close-knit, but we're generally communal and social animals, so we experience a variety of different cultures in our everyday lives. And I think that's what keeps people from realizing that it comes from society, it comes from man in the sky.
Yeah, definitely, and I also think if it's because societal the societal morality is interesting to pull apart, because there's also the whole question of, if you are now in a position where you have to make a moral decision, but one for which your modern society either can't prepare you for, or if you think about what would the people in my society do, and you realize that if you had to actually pull their morals apart, it would be immoral. I don't always give to the homeless. We have these car guards, and there's actually one that comes to mind pretty much since my first day on the job. I've tipped him almost every single day. But it does sort of come to a point where you try and put it off a little bit, because there's the whole thing of like giving reaching out the hand and they take the whole arm. So like you want to be tipped for not even having done anything yet. Sorry, that's not how this agreement works, or anything like that. But then also just personal morality and thinking about what is your, if you have to think about your starting point, if you have to think about your starting point for determining what is right and what is wrong, I don't like the idea of having a set of rules that says this is right and this is wrong. I'd much rather prefer a guideline that can help me to work from scratch. Give me the scenario and then help me work from scratch to sort of figure out what is the best thing to do. Something like the trolley problem comes to mind, but that in and of itself is not really that much about morality. It's just, how do people think about, do they think that less violence is okay? Or is it someone who says that, I would rather not want to make a decision, because I don't want any violence, I don't want any pain, I don't want any suffering, I actually had a conversation with a friend at some point, and we were talking about magic mushrooms, and I had already told her a lot about what I know about it, as well as the dangers of the potential dangers of taking it, as well as the obviously dosages, and obviously the higher the dosage, the much more the intense effect will be. And she asked me, well, okay, what if I now take your word for it and I say, okay, cool, I'm going to try magic mushrooms, and I buy 10 grams, but it's my first time, and I just decide to chuck all of it, And I told her, well, I don't have any control over you not listening to literally the entire conversation we've had. If you're going for your driver's license, and the driving instructor tells you, okay, so if you reach a zebra crossing and there are people on the zebra crossing, you have to stop. Whether they're at the very end, if they're approaching, you have to stop. Okay, that's the law. That's the rule. If you don't stop, people get hurt, and you fail your driving test. But that driving instructor still has no control over that person thinking, nah, fuck it, just floor it when you get to the zebra. They have no control, but that is completely on you, the person doing it. Because I remember, and I find this to be a very nice working model, although I think it's probably still very rudimentary, but essentially everything that we do every single day falls within two different spheres. It falls within the moral sphere, or it falls outside the moral sphere, like in the amoral sphere. And for something to fall in the moral sphere, it has to be conscious and it has to affect well-being. So us sitting here talking is an amoral action. Morality, us having this conversation, is not involved. Yes, we are doing this consciously, but it's not affecting your well-being, it's not affecting my well-being, not affecting the well-being of anyone else. So this is not a moral action, but me choosing to run over a zebra crossing, even though there are people on there, is a conscious action, and it can potentially affect well-being, whether it's my well-being or other people's well-being. So, and I have no control over your moral choices, and you have no control over mine. The only people who have any such control is the individual themselves. So, essentially saying that I should be blamed for giving my friend 10 grams of magic mushrooms, and then taking all of it, even though I told them, if this is your first time, take a gram or whatever. If you decide to completely disregard my advice, cool. That's on you, bro. Don't come and jump on me. I told you this shit is dangerous.
Right, you're taking me back now 20 years.
But it's the same question as
my younger days when I was young.
It's the same question. Yeah. It's essentially the same question as the whole thing of there's this guy who's about to be locked up for murder. He shot someone in the head with a pistol. Should we also punish the guy who sold him the pistol? No, you shouldn't punish the guy who sold him the pistol. The guy who sold him the pistol didn't tell him, nor did he know that he was going to shoot that. Yes, every single person has the potential But I mean, there are requirements to get that weapon, and if that person who bought the weapon met all the requirements, you as the salesperson, your conscience is clean, you know. But we live in a society where there is almost this, I want to say infinite regress, but there is an exaggerated regress of responsibility, you know, or of causation, where it's like, oh, well, you know, I know a friend who committed suicide, and his father committed suicide. You don't know anything else about their family. You have no idea what their life was like. You have no idea what the whole family was like, what the whole setup was. But you immediately, and people start immediately assuming, and this was something that I was taught in church as well, that if you have, if you contemplate something like suicide, or if you contemplate like killing someone, even like that, geez, I think of killing someone almost every single day. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it. You know, that is called anger, and I have that control. If you are telling me you don't have the self-control to realize that if you dream about walking into a school and shooting up the place, if you don't have the self-control to separate your actions, your conscious actions, from an unconscious dream, or from a subconscious, you know, dream or fantasy that you have, then you need help, my friend. You need serious help. And that is something that in religious circles, you know, is like, you know, oh, if you have these ideas are so dangerous, you know, and that's why religion is dying, because ideas poison religion in turn, and it makes it die out. And we need more ideas, and we need more good ideas, if we want to see it eradicated. I hope.
I agree 100%.
That's the first time the little anti-theist in me came out, you know. I'm just going to put him back in there, you know.
So tell us, Morne, what would you say to a younger version of yourself? You know, like, you know, think back, you know, before you started questioning. What did you say to a younger version of yourself, or for that matter, to anybody who is questioning these religious ideas? You know, just to jumpstart this journey, or to give the snowball that first roll down the hill.
Well, what I would tell myself, a younger version of myself, and someone asked me this as well, like many years ago. They said, if you could time travel and you know, take what you know now and tell your younger self, you know, if there's something really important, what would it be? I would go back to grade 7, and then I would yank myself out of the chair in my natural sciences class and say that what you are being taught is not science. You are being taught a fairy tale, and you are being taught a lie. Okay? And I would strongly urge my parents to put this child in a different school, you know, one where there is proper secular education. But for that, you probably have to go overseas. I don't know if you can really find, you know, a reliable school like that in South Africa. But to other people who are questioning their journey, there are millions of people out there who are asking the same questions as you have, who have also suffered trauma because of religion, and it really takes, it's painful, but it really takes some sitting down and thinking to yourself, thinking about the experiences you've had and where you are now, to realize that you have suffered from religious trauma. Your religion has damaged you mentally and psychologically, and that it is perfectly okay to have these doubts and to have these questions. And I want to say that if you just key in, like if you just type in one word in the thought, one specific word, whether it's about creation, or whether it's about morality, or whether it's about slavery, or anything like that, or about, you know, again, like any sort of physical abuse that is, you know, being kept quiet. If you key in just a few of those keywords, and this is important, look at the results, and don't go to religious organizations for those answers. Look at secular organizations, look at secular web pages, look at secular or even atheist YouTube channels where people make informative content about this, addressing the science, the philosophy, the chemistry, the biology, and the whole sociological effect of all these things. Because what you will find, if you have a worry, if you think back, and if you have been abused as a child, by someone in your community or by someone who goes to the same church as you, if you go to a religious channel, chances are very, very good, not 100%, because very few of them are still honest, but they will convince you, they will gaslight you, and they will convince you that what you felt was not abuse. They will try and convince you that you deserve to suffer the way you suffered. And I promise you that is not the case. You did suffer, and you deserve to recognize that trauma and to look at that trauma, look at the darkness, and say, I see you. I see you for what you are, but you are inside me, and I controlled you, and you are perfectly in control in the way that you react to that, but you can't do it alone. And I'm very sorry to say this. You can't do it alone. You do need help, and you deserve help. So, by all means, go get it.
Yeah, and this is the first step. So yeah, I see you're also very passionate about just normalizing dissent from religion. Like normalize atheism, normalize talking about it, because people consider religion is one of those sacred cows, that nobody seems to touch, and as of late, people are starting to say, like, wait a minute, like, why do we consider this cow sacred? Like, what is so sacred about it? And when you actually think about it, there's not very much about it that is wholesome and good. But I can sit here, I'm at this stage of my atheism, where I'm so over talking about, the evils of religion, because, you sound like a broken record. I acknowledge it, and I actually want to ask people, like, what are you doing to fix it? You recognize this, the cesspool within your own organization. What are you doing to fix it? Let's talk about solutions.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, as soon as you start, the religion is very sensitive. So as soon as you mention something that's wrong with it, then they take it as a personal attack, and it's like, oh my, how can you attack my gentle Jesus on the cross? Look at all the charity we do. We do so much charity. Look at all the orphans we adopt.
And they don't talk about I was once on a TikTok live where this guy insisted that the only reason that Christians go out and do missionary work is to help people, and one of my friends just said, you do know that is absolute nonsense, right? You do know that the primary goal of missionary work is to gain followers, is to get converts, is to convert people to Christ. You don't care about helping people. You don't care about feeding them. You want them to believe in Jesus. And when you were talking just now, something else sort of like I just formed this sort of little abstract metaphor, and I also think that could probably be why the baptism for me was was so memorable, because the difference between being baptized, being born again, and becoming an atheist, and realizing that you're an atheist, realizing that there probably, almost certainly, definitely is no God. The difference is, if you're baptized, you bullshit yourself into thinking that you're a better person. When you admit that you have these doubts, and when you do deconstruct your religion, and when you do realize that there is no God, then you have become a better person. Then you have taken the first step to making yourself a better person. You don't become a better person by saying that, oh, I have done this one thing and now I'm a better person. It is a constant ongoing process. It's a conscious thing. It's passive. It's not something you just do once and now everything has changed. It is literally an everyday road that you walk. And it's hard, it's difficult, But that is what life is. Life's a bitch, you know. But I think we can have some pretty damn good times, you know. And even though it can be quite mindless sometimes, we can still have good times, and we won't be bullshitting ourselves. Just be in the moment. And what you also said, Dean, about your where you are in the process of your atheism. I don't know, how long have you been an atheist?
Probably for about 7 years now. Yeah.
Really? So you got 2 years on me. You became an atheist. Oh shit! You became an atheist when I finished school. Holy shit! No, I think
I mean, you know, it's technically speaking, that's when I actually admitted and asserted it, you know. But I mean, I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
extremely nonchalant about the whole idea of religion for probably about a decade before then, you know. But I mean, I
Jeez.
still had like this deistic, you know, the God of Spinoza type of idea
Mm-hmm.
in my head, you know. But yeah, you know, I don't know. You know, you go through shit in life, and then you just realize at some stage, like, mm, this
Yeah.
ain't working.
Better late than never, man. But
I'm happy
I
for you guys, you know, like you young guys, you know, like, you know, I wish, you know, like what I could tell myself at a younger age, you know, like if I could go back and tell myself maybe at like the age of 18, like, you know, and
yeah,
not tell myself, but give myself a small drop and you feel sick, you know, and then like, like,
yeah,
wake up, they're selling you bullshit, you know, like
yes,
this, that's it, you know, just those words, you know,
yeah,
don't go into any rationales or logical arguments, just a good snot clap and saying like, "Wake up!"
yeah. It's but about the part, it's also something that I've been thinking about for the past few months. It's like, am I still gonna go on Facebook, and if someone comments something, if there's something in the news of like, oh, this gay couple got married and it's yay and it's everything and it's great, you know, because I'm obviously also pro LGBTQ, and now suddenly there is some flippin' homophobic asshole in the comments. I I yes, those people do deserve to be taken out. Their comments do deserve to be addressed, and if they can be shown to be a fool, and that has been something that has been so much fun. Unfortunately, it mostly happens to minors, where you just have a minor in some live show commenting some horrible stuff, and then in 10-15 minutes flat, you're on their Instagram, you're on their Facebook, you find their parents' Facebook, you find the school they go to, you find the number of the coach that coaches them, and be like, and you just send him a private message, and like, hey, Coach Quibus would not be very happy if we found out that you were just calling people gay, or if you were just calling people names on the internet, thinking that no one can trace you back. You know, you've got to be a little bit more careful. Luckily, there are adults on here, or like on the internet, that are stupid enough to do the same thing. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you, because like PewDiePie said many years ago, he said, you know, we should love stupid people, because without stupid people, we would have no one to laugh at.
That's so true.
Um, but when I think about now, and this is now painting the picture, I live at home. Uh, I do have a part-time job, but also have a lot of free time. How do I best spend that time? I think, you know, and I don't think my time will be best spent if I'm constantly engaged in some argument with some bigoted asshole on the internet. I would love to be able to garner enough of a following to regularly go live and just have, you know, also kind of like these sort of conversations with other atheists, asking them all sorts of questions, and other Christians and Christians as well, because I've had amazing conversations with Christians, and there's one that well, we haven't spoken in a long while. I haven't been very active, but incredibly intelligent person. An incredibly intelligent person, and in the process I also learned to express myself a little bit better as well. Because, and I keep hearing people correct me on this, saying, no, you're doing fine, you know what you're talking about. I really don't think I don't. I really don't think I do. I really do always see the room for improvement. But again, that might just be my internalized capitalism, you know, coming out there. Oh, you got my face. Oh, Christ.
Yeah, no, this is your TikTok, eh? This is
Yeah.
I am the morning star, all with underscores in between. Yeah. You've done quite a lot, huh?
Yeah, I mean, just like how many do we have? Oh my goodness. Okay, so the bottom right, that was my first one.
Yeah.
And so we got how many rows? We got four rows of 8. So yeah.
It's 8 multiplied by, so there's 8 multiplied by 5 is 40.
5. So, oh yeah, it's got 40 videos on there. Cool. I thought it was like 30, I think.
Yeah, your posting schedule, my friend. You must pick up your posting schedule.
Yeah, but you can see even if you scroll way down to the bottom, I think you will spot there are 7 videos. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there are 6 videos, and what I basically did was I uploaded like I would record. Actually, the next batch, the one with the pink shirt. I think the next bit when I had a pink shirt. There I recorded 7 videos and I published one every single day, and I did it on every Monday, and it worked out quite well, I think. I really enjoyed it, and I think I can go back to doing that again. But yeah, that'll all be in good time. We'll do that again. And where I'm wearing a beanie was just, you know, a bad hair day where I needed a haircut. So.
Amazing. Morne, thank you so much for your time. You know, like it's been great getting to know you. We'll post this over to YouTube, and I'll post links to your TikTok and anything else that you seek to promote. And keep fighting the good fight, as they say.
Thank you. That was good, Dean. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Amazing. Thanks, man.
Cheers.